Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk about OCD, what it is, and sort of the various manifestations of it. And I'm going to do a lot more videos on OCD, traits associated with OCD, and ways to help with OCD. Before I got into the video, I just wanted to mention a couple things. Let me know if my camera angle in terms of how high it is good, because I've noticed like sometimes it will cut off parts of my face and it's hard to see that when I'm recording. So just let me know if it looks okay. And then the other thing is that I noticed a lot of you weren't getting the notifications from what you told me. So you might have to click the bell in order to get notifications for my videos, because I've noticed they're getting a lot fewer views than I used to get. That might just be because I haven't been active lately, and so not many people are coming back, but hit the bell and see if that works. To get in this topic of the video, I want to establish what is OCD. OCD is, and actually have the definition in my DSM. OCD is a disorder that's characterized by obsessions and or compulsions. And I will go into detail into what those are. Obsessions, compulsions, or both. Obsessions are defined by 1. Recurrent and persistent thought, urges, or images that are experienced at some time during the disturbance as intrusive and unwanted, that in most individuals cause marked anxiety or distress. The individual attempts to ignore or suppress such thoughts, urges, images, or to neutralize them with some other thought or action, i.e. by performing a compulsion. Compulsions are defined by repetitive behaviors, e.g. hand washing, ordering, checking, or mental acts, e.g. praying, counting, repeating words silently, that the individual feels driven to perform in order to respond to an obsession or according to rules that must be applied rigidly. 2. The behaviors or mental acts are aimed at preventing or reducing anxiety or distress, or preventing some dreaded event or situation. However, these behaviors or mental acts are not connected in a realistic way with what they are designed to neutralize or prevent, or are clearly excessive. And then it says other things like the obsessions or compulsions are time-consuming, they're not attributable to another condition, etc. To give you a better picture of what types of obsessions and compulsions might be present, there's actually, I have in this book called Stop Obsessing, I recommend it. There's various types of OCD, and I'll probably do another video going into the various disorders that are associated with the OCD, because now OCD is seen as something that is obsessive compulsive and related disorder. Some people even think that OCD is on a spectrum. If you just include all those disorders into one disorder and just call it OCD, it would be a spectrum. But that's not currently what the consensus is, at least for the DSM. It's just that it's its own category and it has related disorders. So it's no longer an anxiety disorder, even though I would argue it is very steeped in anxiety. So the types of obsessive compulsive people, which I'm reading from this book because I think it's the best classification of people with OCD, and people can argue outside of this. The medical consensus actually argues a bit outside of this. So it is kind of arbitrary, but I do think it covers the different types of OCD. So number 1 is washers and cleaners. Washers and cleaners feel that they must get rid of some sort of contamination, and this can be a very wide range of things. Some specifically don't want to be infected with a specific virus, like HIV is a common one, but some people don't actually feel like it's a contamination in terms of a virus or a parasite or bacteria or whatever. They don't feel it's like that. They feel like it just something feels contaminated. They don't like the feeling of being contaminated. And this is where we get into the concept of magical thinking, which occurs a lot in OCD. Magical thinking is when you think in a rational way that something will be caused by some action you do, or by some action somebody else does that has no clear connection with that consequence, people will still think the consequence will happen. An example, a lot with people who count, is that they think if they count something a certain number of times, then that a consequence will happen, or that something will be neutralized from happening. Washers and cleaners, either wash their hands compulsively, clean everything compulsively, get rid of any items they think might be contaminated, don't see any people they think might be contaminated, don't want to touch things like doorknobs or money. So it can really be a number of things even with that certain subcategory. And this is the stereotype of the OCD person who has to wash their hands over and over, and it's not the only one. So another group of people, which is also kind of stereotypically associated with OCD, are the checkers. And by the way, many people who have OCD have more than just one. But the kind of the primary one that defines your life would probably put you in that category. So checkers really are afraid of disasters happening a lot of the time, so they feel like they have to check and go over their actions in order to feel safe. And this can be a variety of things. The stereotype is you keep checking your stove to make sure that there's no fire, but people also drive over the same amount of the same space over and over again because they want to make sure they haven't hit anybody. Sometimes if they'll check for stuff on the floors to make sure that nobody's going to slip or step on something dangerous, because they feel really guilty a lot of the time that they could have caused an accident and not known it. That's definitely another form of OCD that can be really time consuming because of the rituals involved with it. Then repeaters are people who have to do something over and over and over again. For example, one woman felt that she had to dress herself and undress herself over and over and over again. So as you can imagine, this is also very time consuming. And again, they tend to have magical thinking, where they'll tend to associate their counting or their repeating of something to be associated with some consequence, even though it doesn't make sense logically. And a lot of people with OCD know that it doesn't make sense logically, but they just feel that it does. And their feeling in that case ends up ruling their lives more. So the next are orders, and this is the one that is most commonly associated with OCD, is making sure everything looks right, everything looks symmetrical, all that kind of stuff. But again, that could be any number of activities or things that they want to keep clean or symmetrical. When people say, I'm so OCD because they do some of that, that's not OCD. Having like a little bit of neatness is not OCD. OCD is when that neatness turns into a emotional anguish over something not being ordered correctly. And often, people with the ordering OCD, as well as other types of OCD, will have others perform the compulsions for them. And again, they're not doing it to spite other people. They're just doing it because it causes them so much distress. So the next one is kind of the opposite. And here's the part where this classification comes in conflict with the DSM classification, because hoarding is now considered its own disorder. But this one, I think, was written before the DSM, and it classifies hoarding as a type of OCD, which I can definitely see. This is almost the opposite. They just keep collecting stuff and keep collecting stuff and keep collecting stuff because they think it might have some use later on. And I actually have engaged in a bit of hoarding behavior myself, even though I'm not a hoarder. So it's not uncommon, especially if you already have OCD, to to kind of engage in some behaviors of the other types. And then there's thinking ritualizers, which this also feeds into people who have more religious obsessions, that they think, I'll have to pray a certain amount of times, I have to say a number of words a certain number of times. And it's kind of ties into the repeaters. It's just that this is more of a mental ritual. And again, that's highly associated with magical thinking. And then the last one is pure obsessionals, which is the type of OCD I have. It's marked by, usually there's no or very little compulsions, but the obsessions are very disturbing. And I dealt with this personal experience. I mean, my obsessions have sent me to the mental hospital a couple times. So even though this one doesn't have compulsions and people might not think it's that time consuming, it can actually be very time consuming and very distressing. And it's not uncommon for pure obsessionals to have like some sort of compulsive behaviors too, like I know I do, but they're not associated with the thoughts. So the problem with pure obsessional OCD, even though it is a type of OCD, and like I read in the DSM, you still meet the criteria for OCD even if you have no compulsions. A lot of mental health professionals haven't caught on to that. They don't think it's really OCD. To summarize, OCD is, you can have obsessions, you can have compulsions, or you can have both. I think it's most common to have both, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. And as for books I recommend, if you want to learn more about this, again, there's Stop Obsessing, there's Freedom from Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, which has helped me a lot. And then, of course, you can always go to general psychological, education places, like just online or the DSM. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.